Hello, fellow Earthlings. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to discuss something that we can do for our physical bodies. We are going to be making some bone broth. But first, I wanted to kind of explain how I got into this. So I spent most of my life sick. I was often in and out of doctor's offices, medicated, told I had all sorts of issues. My diet was often very poor. I started studying how to use food as medicine well over a decade ago. Oddly enough, I didn't start exploring this topic to heal myself, but to heal my dog. I had this dog named Rex who I love very much. He wasn't doing very well at about age 10 years old. He was starting to get like thin and frail. I took him into the vet, and the vet really did not have much to say other than he was just getting old. To me, he wasn't old. I was like, he's only 10. Well, this kickstarted my deep dive on how to use food as medicine. I started homemaking his dog food, and he drastically improved. I mean, major improvements. Rex lived vitally for another 4 years. This got me thinking, if he could drastically improve so much by this change in diet, then would that be possible for me as well? And my journey began. Today, I'm a holistic herbalist who loves studying all things about the body. I have been studying how to use food as medicine for well over a decade. I have healed major ailments within myself and in my husband and in my animals through all of this knowledge. Bone broth itself is ancient. It has been cherished since ancient times and is used still by many cultures today, like the Chinese. If you know me personally, you know I love traditional Chinese medicine. And the Chinese commonly use broth as medicine. It's very common. This itself is a staple in my kitchen, and it is so easy to make. I always have bone broth in the freezer. So this is one for my last batch. So this can be taken out at any time and heated up easily. I make a large batch, and I just portion it into mason jars and just freeze most of it. Bone broth has a wide array of health benefits. It is rich in collagen and gelatin, so it's wonderful for the hair, skin, nails, bones, and joints. It mineralizes the body. The amino acids in bone broth can help contribute to muscle repair and muscle growth. Bone broth is often celebrated for its ability to nurture the gut microbiome. It can very much soothe the digestive system, offering relief from stomach ailments, all sorts of stomach ailments. Bone broth is also great to use preventatively just to keep us healthy. And it is also wonderful to have on hand should an actual illness arrive due to all of its nutrients and kind of hydrating properties. It's just all around deeply nourishing. I love this stuff. With all that being said, let's make some bone broth together. Homemaking your bone broth is a great way to use your vegetable scraps, right? You can save items like your onion peels, the tops and the bottoms of carrots and the carrots peels, celery ends and potato peelings, the peelings off garlic, the stalks of different herbs. I have mushrooms and mushroom stalks here. You just want to be careful to not overdo certain potent mushrooms like reishi. A lot of people like to add in seaweed as well. I don't particularly have any today, but that's a good one. Just play around with what you want to add into your bone broth, but stay away from things like brassicas. Brassicas are a genus of plants in the mustard and cabbage family. So those are going to be things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, bok choy. If you add brassicas to your bone broth, it will make it taste and smell like farts, as one of my holistic herbalism teachers so eloquently states. Save your bones. You can see I have tons of bones here. You can use chicken, pork, beef bones when making bone broth. A lot of the time I will make, say bone and chicken, and I'll save the bones. Or you can go to the store and just get a whole chicken and save the carcass from that. Obviously, organic vegetables and natural, good quality meat is best. As you go about your life cooking, Save these scraps in a jar or a container or a bag in the freezer. This is all my frozen stuff. Here, this is just all my scraps that I had in the freezer, and I'm going to go over all of these here in a minute. So in addition to herb and herb stalks, I also like to add in herbal roots and sometimes even flowers to my bone broth. An herbal root is a root of the plant, so that could be anything from ginseng, astragalus, peony. A flower I like to use is calendula, but there are so many out there that one could use. I couldn't possibly list all of the flowers and roots in this episode. Just play around with it. It's easy. I just happen to have calendula in my yard, which makes it a perfect addition to bone broth. I actually don't have any today as they haven't bloomed quite yet, but they will be in my next batch. So you can see I mix it up. You can mix your bone broth up. It does not need to be made the same every time. I make mine differently each time. Just play around with it. Have fun with it. If you don't have roots or flowers, no big deal. Don't add those in. Bone broth is kind of difficult to mess up, in my opinion. Usually when it is not enjoyable, it is because there is too much of one thing, or there's something unusual like brassicas that are added. For example, I personally don't love the flavor of mushrooms, but I always add mushrooms in my bone broth. I just make sure to not overdo it or use potent ones so I don't have a strong mushroom flavor. One of my herbalism teachers always says, the best medicine is the one that you will actually take. So make it something that you'll enjoy. Make it something that you'll like. Don't add something to it that you don't find yourself liking. Sipping on bone broth is like sipping on yummy soup that doesn't have all of the stuff in, like the stuff in it, you know, the noodles and everything. You can also use it in your cooking, like when you're making stews or soups or rice, all of those things. And kind of the extra bonus is making it will have your house smelling like absolutely amazing for days. Okay, so let's get started. So you will need a crock pot. I like using a large one, so you have enough to save in the freezer. Might as well make a big batch. You can do this on the stove, but you will want your bone broth to cook for a minimum of 24 hours. I usually do mine personally for 32 to 36 hours. You can go longer. Just make sure you don't go over 48 hours as it can kind of start to get bitter. The reason I don't do mine in a large pot on the stove is because it is hard for me to want to leave the house with something cooking on the stove, whereas I'm completely comfortable leaving the house when there is something cooking in the crock pot. Okay, so let's go over what I have here. All of this stuff was frozen in my freezer that I've accumulated over several weeks or however long of cooking. Of course, there's tons of bones in here, right? You're going to see bones all throughout this. I love garlic, so I cook with a lot of garlic. All the peelings and ends of garlic, you're going to see this loaded with that. I cook with a lot of carrots as well. So the peelings of carrots and the carrot ends are in here. I have some celery ends and then things like herbal stalks. So I have some nettle stalk, I have parsley stalks in here, and I have some dill. I'm trying to think if there's things kind of packed and frozen. So yeah, I believe that's kind of the bulk of it. So a lot of garlic, onions, carrots, celery, and herbal stalks are primarily what's in my frozen batch. Then I went to the farmer's market and they have an awesome mushroom vendor. So I got some mushrooms. Look at this big boy. This is a lion's mane mushroom. Now I've put two massive ones in this crock pot. Lion's mane to me is very mild. So if you're more sensitive to strong mushroom flavors, this is a very good one to use. And obviously lion's mane is wonderful for you. In addition to the lion's mane, I also have some shiitake mushrooms. So I'm going to be adding some of these in there as well. So a little container of that. And then I always add about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into my bone broth. It helps extract the nutrients from the bones. That's something that's always kind of recommended. And then I do have some like some additional like herbal roots that I was talking about. So here is some astragalus. I'm not going to add probably not all of this in, but you can see it's more of a woodsy, rooty type herb. And then I have some Chinese peony. And this is very firm and root based as well. So I will be adding some of this into the crock pot. For flavor, so it's not as maybe bland. I do, people like to add salt in. I have this Icelandic flake salt. I love it. It's by Raw Revelations. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just love this salt. It has super high mineral content in it, so I do add some of this salt in there. Okay, so we're going to start building our crock pot. Okay, so you always want to add the contents in before you put the water. I have some water boiling on the stove. I like to add hot water to the crock pot. Otherwise, it takes too long for it to get up to the temperature. So you're going to add all of your items first and then pour hot water over it. Okay, so frozen contents. Let's get all of these in. So again, onion, celery, carrots, bones, garlic, herbal stocks, all that kind of stuff, all in here. Okay, so we're going to get all of this in without making too much of a mess. Okay, get them all in the bath. All right, and then we'll get the lion's mane in. I might just kind of break that up a little bit. Maybe one more time. Get some of these shiitake mushrooms in. Great for testosterone levels. Okay, we'll get some Chinese astragalus. Put a few of these in. Maybe one more. Sometimes it's just kind of going off your feel. Like, how did that feel to you? Did that, feel like a lot? Did it feel like not enough? That's how a lot of us herbalists kind of operate. So again, some Chinese peony. Okay. So we're going to do some Icelandic flake salt. Get that in here. Perfect. And about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Perfect. All right, so now let's pour some water over this. Okay, so I'm going to go grab the water that I have heating up on the stove. I don't have it like, rapidly boiling, but it is hot. So I'm going to add that hot water to our crock pot. Okay. And just pour on over. Probably don't even need the whole thing. Now you might need to add more water as this continues to cook. Just watch it and see if more water needs to be added throughout the crock pot cooking process. So I am going to put the lid on, let this go for about 32 hours, and then we'll be back to strain it and put it in mason jars. All right, everyone, it has been about 36 hours. Now, I do remove the crock pot from heat for a couple hours before I start managing it. It's just something I personally do. You don't have to, but it does make it a little bit easier when it's not piping hot. I wanted to mention, so I went to this event this weekend. It's called Herb Fest. It happens every year in my area. And one of my favorite vendors, they're called Well Seasons Table. I'm not sponsored by them. I just really like their product. They have like organic and wild crafted herbs that they put together, and they make seasonings out of it. And I got some Emerald Mountain Dust. It has like dandelion, chickweed, has nettles in it. It has a whole bunch of, great stuff. And I forgot that I bought it. And so, a few hours into the crock pot cooking, I just came and dashed a few, dashes into the crock pot because I just intuitively felt like I wanted to do that. So do you see what I'm doing here? Like, a lot of times it's just based off of feeling. Like, what do you feel like adding, to this? So kind of see if you can work off that when you're making your bone broth. And like I said, I never make it the same way 2 times. I'm always adding different items. Okay, so part 1 is going to be removing all of the kind of big chunks out of here. This can be a little bit of a messy process. There's, a couple ways one can do this. I, a lot of times, just take a bowl and I'll start with a spatula. I will start removing a lot of this stuff out of here. So you're going to see, the liquid come quite a bit down. Now, I probably had to add, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 cups more worth of water throughout the cooking process. And, when you start your crock pot process, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing it at a time that is not, you're going to be available within that 48-hour period. So in other words, you don't want to start the process and then have, whatever time you want it to be done happen at like midnight. You don't want to be doing this at midnight. So you're going to kind of want to plan that out. I also have a slotted spoon. So some of this stuff can be picked up once it gets a little bit harder to do. And then you can either throw it out, you can compost it, whatever you want to do. So now I'm kind of using the slotted spoon. It's getting a little more difficult. Word of wise, you want to make sure that this is completely cooled in the mason jars before you put it in the freezer. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. You also do not want to fill these mason jars up to the very top. If you do that, you're going to open up your freezer, which I have done this before, filled them too high. You'll open up your freezer and you'll see frozen bone broth, but the glass is going to be broken all around it. It will expand. Okay, so don't fill it up all the way. So I got a lot of the big chunks out. Now it's kind of so it's still going to need to be strained. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we can get this strained into the mason jars. Sometimes I like to pour this into a more manageable pot, and then I just put a strainer over the mason jars. Where's my strainer? And I just start pouring it like this. That's one way you can do it. You can also just ladle it in. I don't typically do this. I feel like it takes a long time. Maybe I'm a little on the impatient side, but it's not like it's going to take a super long time, but you know what I mean. You're going to be standing here ladling here for a minute. So this is one way you can definitely do it as well. So not too high. Typically, you are going to want to do it under the lip of the mason jar. Okay, so that one's strained. This is ready to go. Also, you always want to label anything that you make. So however you want to do that, I usually just cut these things in half and I just put bone broth and today's date. So I know it lasts a while in the freezer. 6 months to a year. It's going to last a while. Okay. Another way that you can strain it is by going a little bit bigger instead of the ladle. Dip one of these bad boys in. Goes a little bit faster. All right. Pretty perfect. Okay. So I'm just going to fill and strain these mason jars up, get them labeled, and we'll be good to go. You can always taste it too prior. See how you did. So yeah, like a one full one of these seems to fit the mason jar perfectly. But a lot of times I do just dump it into a more manageable pot. And this is nice and cooled off, so it makes it a lot easier to manage. I got the bigger chunks out. Okay, so I have them portioned out in the mason jars. I'm going to leave them out on the counter until I make sure they are 100% room temperature. I made sure I did not fill them too full. I'm going to be labeling them here in a moment with today's date and stating that it's bone broth. And then I will get these into the freezer. So that's the process. It's super easy. I hope I'm encouraging everybody to try this at home. This is such a nutritive elixir that I think is a wonderful item to have on hand in the household. So I always I want to encourage everyone to give this a shot on your own and let me know in the comments if you make this and how you did. Until next time, to thine own self be true.